In this video, I want to take you behind the scenes and show you how I create my starter sites. So in this example, I'm going to show you how I was able to create this blog template. Now, this blog template is very important because when you build a website, you're going to need a landing page that looks like this, which also displays all the content of your blog posts. Now, creating something like this now in Divi 5 takes a few steps, which are a bit more advanced. For example, to showcase these blogs, I use what is known as a loop builder. And throughout all this, I'll be using a design system. Now, why is it important to use a design system? Well, our website is going to look professional and also responsive. Now, I want you to take a look at what happens when I make this website smaller. Do you see that the size and everything is getting smaller and smaller? And even my blog post templates has now changed size. And you can see it snapping over there like that. So this in itself ensures that your website looks great on a mobile device as well as a desktop. And this is what our clients are looking for out there. We need to create websites that are adaptable based on the screen size. And out of the box automatically, if you can achieve that, that is a great step. So I'll be using, as I mentioned, my design system, which is called Krafter. And of course, if you're brand new to web design, I also have a course which is called Divi Mastery 2. This course teaches you everything that you need to know about designing websites with Divi 5. It will show you your way around because, as you know, Divi was built from the ground up and there's a lot to learn. The workflow is different and pretty much it's a new learning curve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to need to do here is to head over to Divi, and what we need here is the theme builder. So I'm going to select my theme builder. So this is where we have our main pages that we're going to be working on, and this is where we find it. So it's under the blog. So I am going to delete this so we can start from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to say build custom body. Okay. So now that I've selected build custom body, everything that we're going to build here is going to be done from scratch. Now, I want you to see how fast I'll be building this because this now is going to be using a design framework. All right, so I'm going to start off by adding a new row. So I'm going to be switching here to see what I have so that at least I'm designing exactly what I have here. So I'm going to start off with adding a single column, and in that column, I'm going to add a heading module. So first of all, I'm just going to add all the elements that I need here. So it's heading and then text, and then we're also going to need a search. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and search for search. Excellent. So this is what you get out of the box with Divi, but this needs to be customized, of course. So I'm going to first of all come over here to my section settings because this is where we're going to be adding our background color. So now I'm going to go to background. So over here, you're going to notice that our design system has the colors already set for me. So I can just choose primary from here, and this saves me going into my color picker here and choosing all the colors. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to make sure that we have the right size of our section. So whilst a section is selected, and you can see it by taking a look over here, you're going to now come over here to our presets, and I'm going to go with medium. So what I normally do first of all is to see the size and what it looks like. So I may go for large, but this is a bit too much, so I'm going to stick with medium. Excellent. The next thing I'm going to do now is to make sure that this row has the right size. So here I'm going to make sure that this is set to text with wide. Okay, because so if it's too wide, it doesn't look very professional. It needs to be between 70 and 90 characters. And our design system here has all those values keyed in. The next thing we're going to do now is to work on our dynamic text, because we want that when we create this template, it can be used on pretty much any website. So I'm going to select my heading here, and then over here on the top, in fact, let's first of all add our dynamic content. So I'm going to click here on insert dynamic content. So here we're going to need our page title. So post page title. There we go. All right. So now that I have that, after it, I'm going to say blog. So I'm going to say space blog. Okay. Now, what is going to happen here is it's going to display the page title, and then after that, it's going to add blog. So next, I'm going to say apply. Now we need to stylize this. So I'm going to come over here now to the design tab, and under my heading text, I'm now going to choose heading 2 like that. Okay, so far so good. I've got my heading 2. The next thing I want to do now is to make sure I've got the right color. So I'm going to click here, and then over here on the heading text color, I'm going to click on this little icon here. Okay, so this is where I get all my colors. So with my colors here, whenever I have a darker background to improve my readability, I'm going to choose neutral 100, or sometimes you can go with neutral 50. It's pretty much up to you. Now you can see it's much easier to read. All right, so for this text here, we're going to need to set this to a body text. So I'm going to head over here to text, click on assign presets, and then I'm going to set it to k-text body. Okay, great. But now, of course, we can't read it. So we need to do the same thing. We're going to come over here to the colors, click on this little gear icon, and I can either search on the top. So I can just say 100, and then here it is. My neutral color 100 is there. The next thing I want to add here is my search. So I'm going to click here because, of course, I can't use the default one. It doesn't look very exciting. I'm going to come over here on the top, and then I'm going to select K-search. Excellent. So now everything is coming together. What I need to do next now is to make sure that everything is centered. So I'm going to select my text here and text alignment, center. I'm also going to do the same for the heading. Open up the heading settings. Make sure that it's centered. All right, so now that everything is centered, I'm now going to hit save. And let's do a quick preview. So I'm going to refresh the page. Okay, so it looks like we still have our old content. I'm just going to do a hard refresh here. Okay. So far so good. The next thing I'm going to do now is to build where the blog posts are going to go. So, you know, if you want to do a quick preview now that you're working in this mode where you have the templates, you're going to need to save it, exit, and then save everything. Okay, so now if I do a quick refresh, I should be able to see the latest stuff. Okay, do you see where it says blog? Okay, I made a mistake. I need to give this the site name. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to go back, go into my blog template. All right, so here we're going to go back in and we're going to undo that. Okay, so we're going to go back in and say we want our site name. So we're going to look for our site name. Okay, there we go, site title. And then after it is where we're going to add space blog. So now it's going to say site name blog. Okay, that's what we need. All right, so now that I've saved that, I want to make it all caps. So I'm going to come over here, set this to all caps. All right, so I think that's looking great. Now, what I also want to do while I'm here is to go in and change this text. So I'm just going to use some lorem text here because I don't want to type too much. So I'm just going to grab a bunch of text like that. And this is going to be a quick description of my site or my blog page. Okay, I may need a little bit more just to balance things. So let's grab a bit more here. Command C to copy, and then I'm going to go in and Command V. All right, I think that's looking much better. Now, as I'm looking at this, it's a bit too wide. Okay, so let's try and use the normal one, text width. Okay, because I think this is much, much better. All right, so while we're here, the next thing we're going to do is to go in and make some adjustments to our spacing. So I'm going to select my row settings, go to my elements and choose column. Now for a beginner, you're probably going to look at this and say, it looks fine, but it doesn't, because the spacing here needs to look great. So I'm going to go to my layout here and set this to gap 0. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and intentionally add my spacing. So I'm going to start here with my paragraph text, and then under spacing, I want to add margin top, and I'm going to set this to extra small, and then over here, I'm going to set this to medium. So I'm going to go to spacing, margin top, medium. Okay, I think that looks much, much better now. I'm going to go ahead and save. Now let's move on to the next section. So I'm going to add my columns. So the first thing I'm going to add here is the text, like that. And I'm just going to say latest posts or latest blog posts, whatever. And then I'm also going to add another column, and this is what's going to house pretty much all my content. So ideally, I want to create a group because this is what I'm going to loop. Okay, so now that I have my group selected, the first thing I'm going to have in here is an image. And then after the image, I'm going to have some text. Yeah, text. And then after the text, I'm going to add a heading. And then after the heading, I'm also going to have some excerpt text. So I'm going to look for my text module. Yeah, so I think that's all I need for now. So what I'm going to do now is to select my group settings, and this is where we introduce the loop. So with my group settings selected, I'm going to come over here to loop, and then I'm going to say enable. Right, so you can see here we have a few items added. Okay, let's head over back to our row settings. So the first thing we need to do to our row settings here is to make sure that it is the right width. So we need to set this to content width. And again, this is where our design system is allowing us to select our content width. Boom. All right, excellent. So now that we have our content width in our row, we need to go into our column now and add auto grid. So I'm going to select my row settings, making sure that's selected. I'm going to come over here to elements. And in the column here is where we need to make sure we have auto grid. All right. So now with our auto grid selected, I can easily go in now and map everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is to select my image, and then I'm going to map my image. So I'm going to come over here to insert dynamic content, and then I'm going to say loop featured image. Okay, so I can see that my loop is working because it has pulled all my blog post images and applied it. The next thing we're going to add here is the publish date. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to come over here to text and click on insert dynamic content. So we need the publish date. Okay, so I'm going to select loop publish date. And then before that, I'm going to say published on colon. So now you can see it says published on, and then the date shows. If you want to change the date, you can change the date format by coming over here, and you can pretty much choose whichever format, but I'm okay with what I have here. The next thing I'm going to add here is my headings. So with my heading selected, first of all, I'm going to set this to heading 3. So I'm going to come over here, set this to KH3. In fact, maybe H4 will do. Okay, so now that I have my heading 4, I also need to map this. So I'm going to highlight or hover over here and then make sure that this is set to my loop post title. There we go. So now my post titles are selected. This is looking great. The next stage is to come over here to my paragraph text, and I'm going to loop this and make sure it's set to my excerpts. So again, I'm going to hover over here, click on this little icon, and then I'm going to say loop excerpt. Okay, great. So when it comes to the number of words, I'm going to set this to, let's say 20. Okay, because I don't want too much. And for the read more text, I'm just going to say read more. Now it's up to you if you want to add the read more text. Perhaps you may want a button, so you can do it with the button if you wanted to. But in this case, I'm just adding my read more text. I'm going to say apply. I'm going to save this for now. Okay, so now that I've saved this, the next step now is to adjust my spacing. You can see here we don't have great spacing. And again, we're going to use our design system to achieve that. I'm going to come over here to design. And then on the layout, I'm going to set this to gap 0. Okay. And then I'm going to go in one by one and choose my size. So I'm going to start off with this one. And I'm going to go to spacing, and then I'm going to say padding top. Margin top. So I'm going to go with extra small. And then over here on the spacing, I'm going to go with small. Okay. And then over here on the bottom, I want to set this to extra small. Okay. Now I may even leave this out because the default spacing that we have here is pretty much okay. Now looking at this, I can see that my text here is way too close to the image. Now the cool thing is you can just always come over here, set this to small. Oops. I'm going to set this to small, margin top small. Okay, and I think that looks much, much better. Now, at this stage, you could probably say, you know what, you're pretty much done. You don't need to do anything more. But you know what, we're going to take this a step further. I'm going to go to my row settings. And let's set this to the right content width. And then I'm going to go into the text here and set this to eyebrow. Okay, now between these two rows, the sizing here is a bit okay. We're using the default here. Okay, so if we go to spacing, we're using the default spacing. So let's see if we can zero this out. Okay, see that? So now I can go in and then add my proper spacing. So I think if I say margin top medium, large is a bit too much. Let's try medium. Okay, I think that looks great. And then I'm also going to go in here and set my section to medium. Okay, now we have a very, very clean layout. I'm going to save this, exit, save. Now let's refresh this page and let's see what it looks like. Okay, there we go. So now it's showing everything. So this could be simple layout. If you want to add a background to this, it's pretty much up to you, but this is a very clean layout. Now let's see if this is responsive. Okay, let's make sure everything is in view. So I'm going to do it nice and slow. You can see there my auto grid is working. Everything is working fine. Look at that. Everything is adapting according to the screen size. Nice, clean, and neat. Look at that. So this is the process that you need to do when you're designing your websites. Now, this design system is very, very affordable. You can use it on unlimited websites. So every website you're going to build from this point onwards should have pretty much the framework that I'm showing you here. It needs to be responsive, it needs to be clean, and everything needs to be very, very easily accessible as you're building your site. Now, it only took me about, let's say 20 minutes. I was also talking while I was doing this, but you can create a website pretty much in half a day or even a day using a design system. It saves you time, and everything that you design becomes super precise. The link to the design system is in the video description below. Go ahead and check it out. Now, this starter site is going to be available very, very soon. I'm going to do my best to release it today, but if not, I'm going to release it tomorrow. Okay, it's going to include a design system as well. So each and every website you start building, it will have a good starting point. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.